Hey,
All right. Well, here we go. This Hangout on Air is live. Hi, everybody who's joining us, maybe, or even late. This month, we're going to get right into it with Matt from Canada, from Mac DevOps. How you doing, Matt?
I'm doing great. It's a sunny day, a little muggy here in Vancouver,
And
but it's beautiful.
you're not driving, right? You're just sitting in your car?
I needed a prop, so I just jumped in my car because it's, pretty awesome place to be. I just love my car. I'm trying to be more American.
It's it's nice and quiet.
It's nice and quiet. I get away from the kids, You kind of caught me in between two tasks. I just got off my bike and I just had to get in my car. So I'm safely parked. I'm ready to speak with all the
Fantastic.
lovely
So
people.
I know you have a little time limit, so thank you very much for joining us today. So you run a conference. That's almost at the end of every MacAdmin monthly meeting, we talk about conferences and upcoming events, and there seem to be more and more of them. You have a relatively young conference. What do you think about the state of conferences for Mac and Apple administrators these days?
I think there's a plethora of meetups and a lot of conferences. I think the self-made conferences have sort of taken over where Apple used to do everything for us. I remember the old days of going to Macworld in San Francisco and hanging out in San Francisco and WWDC and all that kind of stuff. But when the IT track disappeared from WWDC after 2009, and when the Macworld sort of disappeared, there was kind of the choice of only going to MacTech, which MacTech was great, went year after year. You guys did a great job with that, but I thought we needed something else. So I was definitely inspired by everything that was going on before me.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, when you say was, MacTech is still going. It's not, you make it sound sort of dead and buried. We're still
Oh,
rocking.
no,
But
no.
yeah,
I don't have any.
I definitely
I just
agree.
wanted to. Yeah, go ahead.
There are more and more, and I think that's a good thing. I think we're seeing, these different conferences sort of bring their own flavor to things, and it's really nice. Sort of a different vibe from each space and each conference and each group that's putting them on. Um, but hey, you're here. You run Mac DevOps. Why don't you tell us a little bit about Mac DevOps and what you do, and remind people that there are still some open spots left and that they should join you.
Yeah, we got a bigger space this year. We got a theater space instead of the smaller classroom space we had. So all and cozy, just to make it nice and real. But we got a few more spaces. So we got 20 tickets, lots of room for everybody to join us. We're about 75 right now, and we got up to a space for 95 or 100 people if anybody else wants to join us. The focus of Mac DevOps is basically being inspired by DevOps, being inspired by code, being infrastructure, which is a lot of our reality these days. Basically, I was inspired by everybody working together on GitHub, perhaps Monkey and open source and all these other software projects, everybody working on it. It's a beautiful thing when Facebook and Dropbox and everybody can jump in on Monkey, and everybody else can jump in on these different projects. But not too many people knew about or were comfortable with GitHub, and I certainly took my example as I'm a dumb ops guy. I'm just an XN guy. I build servers, I do that storage stuff, but DevOps and software was always more mystical for me. So I thought, what if there was lots of other people, IT people, that wanted to up their game and get into how to get into GitHub, how to work on shared code together, how to, and sort of shine the light on cool people building cool projects like Joe Chilcote and Outset, and people building, Monkey Report or Sal, and just sort of trying to demystify it, as well as provide a place for people that are actively building projects together to get together face to face. Because face it, these conferences are kind of an excuse for people to get together. I'm working really hard to make it with awesome talks, 20 different speakers, great, intro topics and advanced topics, but people really just want a place to get together and talk about these cool open source projects. And people in Cascadia and all around the world want to get together and learn about GitLab and Git and how to work together and to really up their game and learn new skills. And we're not elitist. We're just cool people trying to help everybody.
Yeah, I mean, conference organizer to conference organizer, I think the dirty secret here is that you could probably rent a space for 2 days and just tell people to show up, and people in the Mac admin community would show up and exchange ideas and have a great time. You know, the conference sessions are sort of like a, you know,
afterthought almost.
Well, not an afterthought, but it's sort of like gravy, right? Or it helps provide the foundation of what people might want to speak about in the so-called hallway track. But, you know, the Mac admin community, I've said it for years, it's really one of the best in the world. Very, very little drama. I can't think of, you know, any drama, and people do genuinely want to share and communicate, and it's really nice to see. So yes, I will be one of your I will be one of your speakers, so I'm excited about that. This is also going to be my first year at Mac DevOps altogether, so I'm excited about the whole event.
You're going to talk about something you know very well, right? How to fail.
That's right. That my life is failure after failure, but you learn from those things, so that's important.
It's going to be the best topic. It's going to be awesome. I'm looking so forward to it. Mikey is going to be there talking about the end of times, you know, with the whole MDM and how things are changing for traditional IT. And Rich Troughton's going to talk about APFS, which is, you know, we're right in WWDC week, so you know, things are going to be changing under our feet. So it's going to give us lots of stuff to talk about while we're there. Have some great other speakers that I found in Vancouver. We have Sarah Jimmy Lewis talking about the dark web. Tor, she's done a lot of work on how anonymous is the anonymous web. She used to work for GCHQ. Got another local coder. She's going to talk about coding in schools. Is it important to teach coding, or is it not important? She helped a coding in schools project in BC in our province. So lots of great nerd talks, and lots of time for people just to get together and chat and hang out together, and I hope lots of hugging, you know.
Yeah.
Beautiful love.
Awesome. I'm open to hugs and hugging. So all right. Anything else you want to tell us about DevOps?
We're going to try and do a mini hack night. It's not going to be a PSU 4-day long hack thing. We're try and do a Monday night sort of Raspberry Pi, and also Team Python versus Team Swift with Mikey and Joel. Just it's going to be you know, it's going to be beer and food, and it's going to be my sort of spectator sport. You know, maybe we'll throw Victor into the pile too. You know,
sounds awesome.
You know it, Victor. Anyway, that's all I got to say. Carry on, guys.
All right. So to anyone watching now or recorded, more tickets left for Mac DevOps, so please join us. All right, everybody. Okay. Matt, I know you have a sort of a time limit, so thanks for joining us. Hang on as long as you'd like to. But
okay. Thank you, Ed.
Yeah, thank you. So just want to open it up to the floor, ask some questions in Slack, or say hi, introduce yourself. If no one has any questions, one thing that's been on my mind a little bit, I know should be all of us, is filing bugs. It's a pain, and Apple doesn't make it necessarily easy or nice. You file bugs, they seem to go into a black hole. But when you do get the chance to meet Apple employees, they will always tell you that it really does make a difference, and they really do set priorities based on how many machines that bug is impacting, how many different customers. So I've been trying to get back in the habit of filing just about every little thing with Apple and letting them sort of decide whether they can fix it or not, or maybe they've seen this report. It might seem insignificant, but they might have seen this report from many people. So it really does help drive that forward. So yes, it can be a pain. The process can be a little opaque, but I'm here just to please ask people, go file bugs if you think you've hit a bug, or feature requests might not necessarily be a bug, but you think something could do something better. Please, 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 go file bugs. That's bugreporter.apple.com.
Someone wrote a tool to do that process and make it a lot easier using like a standalone GUI app, but I can't recall the name of it.
Yes, Quick Radar maybe.
Something like that.
They did, and the nice thing I think about Quick Radar is it will post both to Apple's Bug Reporter and OpenRadar. And OpenRadar is this app engine app that anyone can post their radar to, for the people who might not know. And you can share this bug with everyone, which you can't do with Apple's tool. You have no insight. OpenRadar is kind of nice. If you file something with Apple and it gets closed right away as a duplicate, you have no idea. You can go search on OpenRadar. So you can find that duplicate. The only thing with OpenRadar is that it is open to the world, so you want to make sure you don't accidentally post any confidential information or something that you might not want people to know. And just circling back around, Matt just sent me a discount code for Mac DevOps. If anyone is still planning on going and haven't bought their tickets yet, I'm going to post it in the channel, the Slack channel, for anyone who's interested.
So do you consider my name's Todd, by the way.
Hi.
NestTS on whatever it is, Slack and Google and all that. But anyway, do you consider feedback done through the feedback assistant for seed programs, bug submissions?
Yeah, we actually had a meeting with some people from Apple recently, and Apple's really funny when you talk to them, because they can be sort of coy about things, but you can kind of see where they're going. And they asked us very specifically, like, hey, do you ever file feedback through the feedback assistant? And we kind of said, well, no, we've seen it on there during the betas. But I think that's the problem. The feedback assistant, I think it only shows up when you have a beta applied to your device, whether that's iOS or macOS. And you can't just go get it from the store or the developer site and install it and use it. So that was our feedback to them. If they want more people using a tool like that, they need to make it available outside of beta seats.
Right. Yeah. So I'm always in the beta stuff, so I always submit my stuff through that, and I've been bugging them for 2 years. The BI's broken, and they keep telling me that's the way it's meant to be.
But to answer your question, yes, in speaking with some people from Apple, they do value that feedback, just as much as filing a radar.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure you thought it was a good, valid way to do it, because I never go through the radar side. So.
Yeah, I think the other thing we've learned dealing with Apple for quite some time, like multiple points of attack. If you use the feedback assistant, also go use Bug Reporter, and possibly even post in the developer forums. The more that Apple as a whole sort of sees references to a particular problem, they will prioritize it up. I don't think complaining on Twitter counts, but all those other forms of feedback to Apple are generally pretty useful.
I'm never going to tweet as long as I live, I think. So.
All right. Any questions this month? Anyone running into any issues, anything that they want to announce, talk about, get feedback on? Actually, before we get off of that, Zach in the Slack channel posted, which I haven't noticed this, but apparently the feedback assistant is at System Library Core Services Applications Feedback Assistant, and I'm not sure if that's on a stock system or if only on the betas, but that's good to know.
What was it?
System, Library, Core Services, Applications, Feedback Assistant app.
I'll look on one of my other boxes.
Yeah, we're looking right now.
Yeah, it's on this machine.
And that's not running a seed?
Not running a seed.
Oh.
I couldn't tell you if it's ever run a seed. It probably has, but it's currently running.
It's currently, so if that was on a seed at some point, then at the very least they don't remove feedback assistant.
And it could be that they have it buried in their kind of like system image utility, and when you sign up for the beta, it just kind of throws it in your dock for you.
Maybe.
I'll look on another system that I know has never been on. Can you see?
Thomas in Slack is following up and saying, I agree with this, that the chances to get feedback from Apple, it's a lot better through Feedback Assistant than if you give them feedback through bugreport.apple.com. Although I would say doing both is even better.
Yeah.
You know, it's frustrating because it's more work for you. One of those likely goes into a black hole, but it is definitely better. Again, I consider this sort of this multiple points of attack strategy with Apple.
So feedback assistance on every 10.12 machine I have anyway.
All right. Well, that's good to know. That's good to know. That's a new move for them. I don't think that was the case under 10.11. So interesting. Because when we asked Apple, some of the Apple people about that, right? I don't think even they knew that.
They did not.
They did not, right? We asked them like, well, if you want people to use this, you need to get it on machines. And they were like, oh, okay, well, we'll think about that.
Perhaps the day after the meeting,
Maybe they push it out. You never know. Apple has all these ways to do these silent pushes of things now. Okay, nice. Victor mentioned that he started compiling radars related to MDM/DEP in a GitHub wiki, and that is really useful because, as Matt mentioned, one of the topics at Mac DevOps is going to sort of be around this glorious new future where we're going to need to do a lot of things management-wise via MDM, and we're finding that is not always sufficient, or there are lots of holes in doing that. So if there are bugs, now's the time to be testing and filing those.
Yeah, unfortunately, from my experience, it seems that none of the things that Apple wants us to start using or wanted us to start using like 3 years ago are ready for production use at all. Like even there's something as simple as getting the EP enrollment. It works only if you have everything figured out perfectly and like got around the bugs that are there. And unfortunately, there's a lot of bugs related to the store download deep diamond running on the Macs. So it ends up like locking up and crashing. And if you have a series of different configurations, it might get the first one or the second one, and then it will crash and not get the rest. And, you have to deal with that. So yeah, unless you get it right, it just doesn't work. I have one of those bugs there. Apple actually closed it recently and just told me to reopen it on a new version. Because I've had it since 10.11, and they tell me like I need to open this with 10.12.4 again. But yeah, I can beat it.
Huh. Interesting. So yeah, it seems like MDM for Apple is still very much sort of an iOS first approach. They definitely think about iOS and make sure that use case works, and then they come along and kind of say you can use it for the Mac, but there are a lot of settings that work on iOS that just are ignored on macOS. Like macOS does nothing with them. Yeah. And that can be a bit frustrating as Apple starts to tell us like, hey, you should be looking at MDM. And yeah, that's not great. But at the very least, though, our current tools are still working, and we do have ways of managing these things yeah, man, it would sure be nice if I could just push out a profile and be done with it.
Yeah. The other thing is we've been helping a lot of people in Slack with setting up accounts. Like a lot of people are signing up for DEP,
Yeah.
which is nice. But I recently went through this process and I ended up blogging about it because there's a lot of things that you wouldn't expect. And for example, you got to have unique Apple IDs for every service you sign up. Every service you sign up, you got to have a DUNS number, and Apple will call you individually to verify your contact information for every one of these services, like enterprise account, PPP, and so on. And I was just thinking, I set up G Suite, earlier this year, and then I set up all these Apple accounts, and it was like, everything with G Suite was like within 10 minutes, I can register my company and have, a complete set of everything. And all I need, at the end is my credit card number, and that's all. Versus with Apple, it really takes a few weeks just to get enrolled.
Yeah.
That's a bit of a bummer.
Yeah. I think I can sort of understand the process from Apple's perspective. But, it would be one thing if it took, a longer time than you expected, but once you got set up, everything just sort of worked perfectly. But unfortunately, that isn't necessarily the case. There still are a lot of things you can trip over with MDM as we're finding out. I think we're perhaps a little behind the curve on testing Mac OS with MDM, and we're just sort of getting a proof of concept up and running. And yeah, we bump into all these things that, some little piece of the puzzle that needs to be assembled perfectly, doesn't quite work for one reason or another. So yeah, it can be frustrating. So that's another place I think we need to keep giving Apple feedback about, our use cases, where MDM falls short, what we can't do with MDM that we're currently doing with our current tools, whether that's, Monkey or Jamf or whatever. These tools are meeting our needs in ways that profiles and MDM don't always. So it's another good place for feedback for Apple.
Well, I feel like for a long time there's been an issue with Apple. 10 years, Apple has been talking about MDM as a solution, and at least for a big part of this last 10 years, they've been very secretive about what MDM does and how it operates. They started out just sort of blessing a bunch of companies, saying, "Yeah, we're going to give you the secret sauce to build an MDM," and that's really problematic considering. Like basically, you ended up with a bunch of companies producing exactly the same product.
Yes.
Over and over and over again.
I agree with that. And then it went to you needed an enterprise account, and the documentation for MDM was protected behind this, enterprise level account. But fortunately, now it's out in the open, so it's available to everyone. But yeah, I agree with you. It took far too long for that to be the case.
That's another interesting thing about the sign up. So I signed up for the enterprise account last week, and I noticed that it asked me in the form for when I was signing up if I was an MDM member, and I had the option of selecting it, and that enabled the CSR option right away. So when I got the phone call from Apple, they actually asked me, what my intended use was, and I said for internal. But the option is called MDM vendor, which can be confusing because I have no intention of being a vendor, but I do have an intention of using my own certificate to deploy this behind our firewall and so on. So
right, and I guess the same would go for anyone using micro MDM. They're going to need their own certificate.
Yeah,
it's not actually a vendor, but yeah, that is a little confusing, but yeah, good to know.
Yep, and that option was hidden before. I guess it still is. So if you sign up, with an enterprise account, it's not immediately available. You have to explicitly contact Apple and say, can you enable this for me? And then it shows up.
Okay. Yeah, and that I feel like there can be frustrations for any size company. If you're a small company, it feels like there can be a bunch of frustrations around this. And then if you're a much larger company, the frustrations is that you're going to move very slowly internally in some ways just to get to Apple, who might move a little bit more slowly than you're hoping for. So there can be a lot of round trips there.
I've helped a lot of people sign up for it, and I think even from a small company to a large company, the thing that causes delays in the DEP application process more than anything else is that some IT person will begin the application process, and Apple requires that the contract, if you like, be signed by somebody high enough up in the company to contractually bind the company to be a DEP customer. And so getting all those people involved and knowing to expect the emails, to expect the phone calls is like super important. You can get all that done, and they don't just throw the emails away. I think it was,
Yeah, I have to say I went to build 3 days of no work at all.
Yeah,
Because we couldn't get the right. We had sitting on somebody's desk, like
right,
the CEO
exactly,
or whatever.
exactly. Yeah.
So even here, I feel like we have a pretty well-oiled machine, and our legal department is, on top of all this stuff. But we really do have one person in our developer organization who deals with all the legal work with Apple. And when we wanted to get set up with DEP, I had to go ask him.
Right.
And he responded, and he's very good about it. But now he sends this over to lawyers, right? So there's this chain of people that need to get involved. And again, everyone here I would consider like really on top of it, but it just can be very slow to get all of those pieces working together. And same thing with Apple. There are a number of different little pieces that can be, frustrating than they require. So anyway, just before we get too far away from this topic, we were talking about the feedback assistant. Zach followed up in the Slack channel. He looked on his 1011 device, and apparently the feedback assistant is there in the same spot, System Library Core Services Applications. So Apple's been doing it for a bit, which is real nice. And then Victor mentioned his blog post on micromdm.io, where he does talk about and cover a lot of what we just talked about with regards to signing up for all the different accounts. So thank you both, Zach and Victor. Anyone else? Questions? Things you're struggling with? Problems? Going once?
I have a very basic question.
Let's bring it on.
A lot of my management experience just revolves around using traditional Bash shell scripting and things of that nature. I'm looking to wrap a lot of what I used to do in Python. Is there any material difference in just using the standard Python that shipped with the OS? If I'm starting at 0, can I start using Python 3? Is there some advantage to doing that?
I think we probably have a lot to say about that, because most of our management tools we use Python. We've stuck with Python 2, right? So whatever the current version is, 2.7 something. 2.7 something. And we've gone so far to ship our own, no, we don't anymore.
What?
We did ship our own Python for a bit, but we don't anymore. Do we still do?
Yeah.
I thought because the version under system was now protected, we didn't bother doing that anymore.
No, there are libraries we include.
Oh, that's right. And also we always wanted to point to that, because before SIP came along, we found a lot of developers, intentionally or unintentionally, stepping on the system Python or installing something or breaking it in some way. And then, of course, that broke all of our management tools. So we started shipping our own version of Python, which means building the Objective-C bridge, and it means doing a bit of work. But once you get that, like we have it all automated now, it's fairly painless. Victor will probably agree, but we've been starting to look at using Go more and more. Go makes these nice contained binaries. And, you don't have to worry about people messing up their system too much. The other thing that can sometimes break Python is someone messes up their path, and the system stuff is no longer the path it's pointing to. I don't think there's so. I'm sort of losing track of the Python world. Even though Python 3 has been out for quite some time, I think you still find more support for Python 2.7. So while I don't think there's any material difference personally, like if you came in here and said, I'm a Python 3 expert, which one should I write in? Like I would say, yeah, stick with 3. But as you're getting help from the community and looking at examples online, I think more, and someone on the Hangout, feel free to jump in and correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like most MacAdmins are sticking with Python, the latest Python 2 that they have.
I think that's true about Python.
In general, right? And like as you look at examples online, there's no shortage of examples in Python 2 and documentation for Python 2.
And they're still actively being developed.
Right.
Like if I was to characterize the shift between Python 2 and Python 3, it was really to make Python more live up to the ideals of the theory behind Python more, which isn't necessarily functionally that great.
Yeah.
Like it's a more perfect language, but it can make it harder to use and more tedious. I've found people generally actively develop like libraries and plugins for both, and most of the development I see is in Python 2.7.
Yeah.
Which is not to put down Python 3. And I think there will be some point in which they'll cross some line and Python 3 will be this thing that's like, oh, this is so much better. Everyone will switch to it.
Python 3 has been out for 6-7 years now, right? So I mean, and
it's been at least 7 years.
And the funny thing is, they give you a way to use some of these Python 3 features, right? From future import blah. So you can do a lot of the things that Python 3 seems to tout as a benefit in Python 2 just by importing these.
I don't think I've ever had to do that.
Yeah, I think that's pretty rare, right? So, but yeah, obviously I think everyone here would agree that, Bash is great, but it has some trappings and it can only get you so far. And, we have a rule that like shell scripts are fine, but as soon as they start to exceed, if you have a Bash script and it has, more than 3-4 functions, you're probably better off doing it in Python where you can do even better error handling and
I mean, I just recently wrote a Bash script that was just a wrapper around the binary, and I started out like, oh, let's write a quick Bash script, and by the time I was done, it's like, to actually make it do what I wanted to do, it was so painful to figure out exactly how my if statement should be phrased and all that stuff. I wish I'd started the whole thing in Python and just done it in Python because it's just much more contained and controllable and readable once it's written. I wish I didn't start over. I finished it in Bash. I wish I started from the beginning in Python.
Cool. How big is your fleet that you manage? Or
well, I tend to work with lots of different customers, but they range all over. But and a lot of it involves training, and so and a lot of the people that I train, some of them have a lot of experience with this sort of thing already. A lot of them come over from being really heavy PowerShell users on the Windows side, right?
All right.
And so I'm always thinking of like, what's the most easily translatable thing I can introduce these people to so they can get going.
And PowerShell is actually really nice and really functional. I think Python with the Objective-C bridge is probably the closest thing to PowerShell in some ways.
In terms of power, like
in terms of power, I think. I mean, if there was a Swift runtime already built into the Mac, that seems like that would be the way to go in a lot of ways because you can write Swift sort of as a script. But right now that means distributing Swift, which is sort of horrible.
Right. Yeah.
All right. All right, everybody. Is that a quorum? I think.
One thing we didn't talk about is all the malware that popped up this week, the Handbrake.
Yeah, yeah, it is kind of interesting, right? Like, I mean, there's always going to be malware, and it's always going to have to be something you look out for. But this is not necessarily unique, but it's an interesting way of getting malware onto a Mac by infecting a vendor's website and spreading it through their downloads.
Well, it is downloads.com, which essentially automates that process, right?
Yeah, right. That's the historic.
Yeah.
That's the historic way of. But the difference is, downloads.com sort of became a known, like, they were doing it themselves. They were repackaging things to get their adware. That wasn't necessarily malware. It was just sort of crapware. It was stuff you didn't want on your machine, but it wasn't necessarily harvesting your passwords or. But yeah, downloads.com yeah, is sort of the classic example of that. But yeah, who was it? Handbrake and one other.
Transmission.
Transmission, yeah. Fortunately, two things that I have not downloaded in a very long time. And, you know, there are products that can help with that. Santa, to some degree, Little Snitch, Block, Little Flocker, those.
I mean, on a protecting your user level, though.
On a protecting your
It's
user
really
level.
difficult.
It
It's
is.
a real challenge. I mean, Santa is the tool for doing that, but it's a lot of overhead.
It is.
You know, there's no denying that like a managed environment with Santa is a lot of overhead.
To a certain extent, yeah. But Victor, did you have any other words of wisdom other than, you know, watch what you click? I mean,
not really. Two interesting things is there was I don't remember the name. There was another malware that was going around last week, and one thing it was doing was popping up. It was trying to phish the user for credentials. So it was using AppleScript.
Yep.
To bring up these prompts, and that they look very real. Like if I was busy and I was thinking of like I just need this, and suddenly I got an iCloud prompt because I'm in iTunes and it says I need to type in the password. Depending on what I'm doing, how critical it is, I might not think twice about it.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that in terms of Apple has not done a great job in helping train people to be discerning about putting in their passwords, right? There are a lot of valid times where on my iPhone or my Mac, I just get a pop-up out of nowhere, and it turns out it's a valid dialogue from the system, but it just pops up out of nowhere and says, oh, hey, I need your iCloud credentials. And I usually click cancel and say, what the hell was that? And I then finally figure it out, and yes, it's asking validly. And something I'm finding frustrating on the Touch Bar Macs, and again, I think this is a place that Apple needs to do a little bit better. So I've registered my fingerprint, I can unlock my machine, I can do all this great stuff with Touch ID on the new Macs. Some system dialogues ask for your fingerprint, and some still ask for a password. I don't know why that's not unified, right? Like some things that I install say, oh yeah, just Touch ID, boom, you're done. Some things don't ask for Touch ID. Like, why is that not a unified thing where the system's just saying, hey, is this a Touch Bar Mac? Have they registered fingerprints? Yes, great. That's how I can get authentication from the user. It's just like this weird mishmash right now. So,
what about the OS saying Touch ID requires you to enter your password when you don't have Touch ID authorization, login authorization turned on?
I haven't seen that.
You go every time I try to log in, it says Touch ID requires you to enter your password.
Are you sure that you've disabled it in? That's not a Touch ID Mac, so
No, that's not.
you can't look. But I did have that problem when I had registered fingerprints.
Right, I have registered fingerprints.
Right.
I don't have login authorization.
But you have to turn that off yourself. Go into the pref pane for Touch ID and disable login. I think that's it.
Even though it's managed.
Even though it's managed, you have to turn that off. Yes, a little frustrating. But at least you're only seeing that at a valid like login window. You're not getting this arbitrary pop-up. And yeah, so Victor, I definitely agree with that. Like that can be frustrating. And I think as administrators or as sort of power users ourselves, we might even be worse at this than end users, because like you said, there are definitely times where it's just like we're in a rush, or you're used to typing in your password. That's part of your flow because you do a number of things that require your password. You're used to these dialogues popping up and you just kind of type in your credentials and hit return, and that can be a problem. Although I guess it's just as much of a problem for end users. I helped my dad migrate from an older Mac to a newer Mac a few months ago, and yeah, anytime a page says, hey, you need Adobe Flash to go view this content, he's like, oh, okay, I'll just go. Like, I mean, I can't blame him, right? Like, how do you avoid that? How do you tell people, like, no, that's fake Adobe Flash? Like, I don't know how you stop people from doing that, right? Like, they have this goal, and in the process of getting there, they're being told, oh, you need to do this thing to get to your goal. Well, okay, I'll go do this thing. So I don't know. It's a difficult problem, and as we all know, antivirus software doesn't necessarily solve that. In some cases, it makes it worse. So yeah, I think the short version is be vigilant, and I know. The Apple community in general, not just the admin community, but the Apple community in general is usually really good about getting the word out about these sorts of things, and it helps quarantine the problem to some degree, right? There's this malware outbreak. Every Mac site, 9 to 5 Mac, and sort of all the general Mac sites are sort of covering this and getting the word out, and as administrators, we're talking about it, on Slack channels or on IRC or messaging each other directly, whatever the case. So I don't have a great answer. I don't think anyone does. If I had a great answer, I'd be a millionaire. I'd have some nice security product, but it's definitely a tough problem, and of course, every time we modify our practices, the people who are writing malware modify what they're doing. So it's a bit of a cat and mouse game, and hopefully we stay ahead enough that we keep quarantining it, and many fewer in number have the problem before it turns into like, oh my gosh, every Mac got infected by this thing. So yeah, you're right though. There's definitely been this uptick, which is frustrating to see.
The other thing that was interesting is so Handbrake isn't a signed application, so a lot of the push went against the developer. Like, you need to sign your thing or whatever, but they actually have a GitHub issue that's been there for a while about signing the app. And to tie back to the conversation we had earlier, the reason they're not doing it is because they need to be this app is developed by a group of developers, and they can't just have a single developer's Apple ID. They would like to have an enterprise sort of a group one, and that involves having a DUNS number, having a legal entity, and all that. And they're just, it's a hobby project on the weekend.
Right.
So I certainly understand where they're coming from. You know, it's difficult to get.
Sure, and the flip side to that also is, I think, you know, we have seen validly signed malware, right? So that's you know, having it signed does mean that Apple can shut it down centrally, but we have seen validly signed malware, and until it's detected, it's doing what it expects to do, and it's harvesting passwords or keystrokes or whatever it's doing, and it has a valid signature. So that's not a panacea. It helps, it's nice, but it's not, you know, it's not a panacea. And, you know, as Ed mentioned earlier, like, Santa can be a bit of overhead, but that's the type of product that's, I think, it can be a bit heavy-handed, sure, but if it's not a valid signature, even though it's signed, some developer you've never seen before, well, crush it. Crush the rebellion.
And also, like, Santa would surface, like, if you ran Handbrake and you had whitelisted that version of Handbrake, it would surface the fact that all these other binaries are then running.
Right.
That you don't know what they are, you don't know where they came from, or what they're signed by.
Right. So
We sign all our versions of Monkey with the internal certificate. I think if you're distributing something in, you know, for your enterprise fleet, it does make a lot of sense to make sure that everything that's not signed, you know, you trust and sign yourself.
right, yeah, we've gone a long way to doing similar work. Like, anyone internally writing apps that want to have them distributed, they have to go get them signed internally.
They're supposed to.
They're supposed to.
They all have at least a roadmap for when they're going to be signed.
Yes. And the other thing we've done is we sign all our packages that go into our Monkey repository, so the client can check those signatures. So we have a lot of verification all around, to be honest. But even that, I mean, there's probably some point that could be subverted. But, you know, defense in depth, right? Like, we're putting as many checks and roadblocks into place as possible.
One last thing, do you know if cross-signing is possible with Apple packages?
I'm sorry, is cross-signing possible with what?
Apple packages, meaning, you know, a developer, a vendor signs something, and you want to sign it.
I don't know. Actually, I was going to say I don't think so, but it might be. We've never tried it. But I don't know. It's a good question. We should test that, because my gut reaction was no, it's not possible, but I think it might be. I don't know. That's a good question. We should test that and bring it up next month. You also asked in chat, Santa can't handle AppleScript, and that is correct.
Or Python.
I was just going to say, or Python,
or
right? Yeah, there's this general category that we decided not to try to trap because,
well,
you know, you can't block the Python binary itself without breaking a ton of stuff, right? So we don't check scripts in general. Yet.
And it's problematic. It's really, really hard to do, and it's
Right.
very expensive in terms of CPU.
So there are actually a number of problems that we decided to just sort of like get version 1 of Santa out the door and think about some of these other things as they crop up, or try to put them in future versions. But so yeah, scripting in general is a problem that Santa does not currently trap. All right, now going once, going twice. Sold. Thanks everybody. I think we're good. Thanks for all the feedback and wisdom everyone passed around, and we'll see you next month.